Oh, hi there, guys. So just wanted to comment today on a really interesting article I came across yesterday on Novara Media, which essentially looked beyond the left-wing victory in any election to consider what societal change might look like under a sort of socialist or left-wing government. So before I look at the article, I want to present a bit of a mea culpa, really. So I always tend to fall into the trap of thinking that there might be an individual out there who could sort of take the reins of a political party and make things better for us. It was there to some extent with Corbyn, and even now I think about things like, what if Andy Burnham took over the Labour Party? Things would definitely be better. And then to a lesser extent, stuff like, I wonder what Zack Polanski is going to do as leader of the Green Party. But I think in reality, it's just wishful thinking and sort of laziness on my part, really. Because I think the truth is that the whole system, the whole political and economic system in the UK is quite rotten. And, how can one person really bring about the change that we need? And that was why this article I found sort of really helpful for me, because it sets out a vision of what sort of systems that we need to put in place and the sort of the grassroots changes that need to happen to make a socialist or, even a social democratic sort of society more realistic. So let's have a quick look at in the article here and see what he's talking about. So as you can see on screen here, it says the new left party must build on its own great human network. And then he talks about the Belgian Workers' Party running free medical centres across that country, Germany's Die Linke party organising tenants around the rent reductions, and then even Reform UK, experimenting with buyers clubs to save people money. And then he goes on to say, stuff like food co-ops, workers' centres, quilt clubs and sports leagues, community canteens, free schools, and collective childcare. And he says the new left party must help build these links in the great human network and give people newfound confidence, skill, and a glimpse of the good life beyond capitalism. And I really agree with everything he said there. So I talk a lot on this channel about, the cost of living crisis and about people's material conditions. And I really believe that for any leftist government or society to sort of get popular consent and be successful, it would need to be rooted in helping ordinary people manage the cost of living crisis and positively impacting people's material conditions. So I think what we've seen with the inflation spike since COVID has just been a sort of turbocharging of a phenomenon that's been happening really for 40 years or more. So we've had huge asset inflation, think of houses. We've had the selling off of our utilities and then those same utilities then charging us more for our daily essentials. So this cost of living crisis is actually built into the system. And in the face of that, ordinary people just don't stand a chance. That sort of exploitation of us as ordinary people, it needs to end. And I think as this article is pointing out, if people can see that their elected representatives are working in their interests, are promoting policies that benefit ordinary people, and are just speaking in like plain, straightforward language, then it could quite easily get popular consent beyond a single election victory. Typically, the supporter base over recent times for any left-wing government has been sort of public sector workers, minorities and those in poverty or people who are in receipt of benefits. And it's very important that those groups of people are supported. But I also wanted to think a little bit today about how any such system that we put in place could look beyond that core support to broaden its appeal. And I wanted to think of a little case study, really. So I just thought of a fictional sort of window cleaner or sole trader, who's maybe 35 or so, someone who is a renter and parent of a primary school aged child with a partner, but who's typically sort of politically sceptical of any left-wing ideas and who might be more right-leaning, perhaps maybe they voted Reform or Tory in the past. How do we on the left bring that person into the tent? And just to build on the ideas in the article on Novara there, in no particular order, I think there are absolutely loads of things that we could do to help that person. Number one, we could do free school holiday clubs. Perhaps they'd be organised by the local authority but be run by volunteers and other parents, so he doesn't have to take time off work unpaid in the summer holidays. We could have a huge council house building programme so that eventually he could perhaps be proactively contacted and offered a place on a waiting list for housing. Could we ever get to a place where every renter is added to a waiting list for social housing? I don't know, why not? Failing that, could we have a renters register where renters and landlords have to sign up, and which people can register their complaints or housing issues, and which local government can then intervene on if needed with private landlords. We could have, an expansion of local credit unions so that this guy could get a loan to expand the size of his business or new equipment. We could have expansion of the Preston model so that this guy could be added to a register for local government contracts, for example. We could have promotion of a sole trader union who can offer him legal advice and who could maybe help him chase non-payers, or who could help him complete his tax returns or with any accounting issues that he might have. And then there's probably even like smaller wins too. So we could do stuff like, website development classes put on free by local volunteers. You could have free Power League sessions throughout the week so that he can do something fun in the evenings, when his kid's in bed. You could have repair cafes where you could take broken household items for repair. So you can see just with some of those ideas that there's a real mix of sort of big government issues and then local government issues, and then also hyper local issues and solutions. And I think that's key, really. So, in a time of scarce resources and where, bond markets seem to hold all the cards in terms of our government spending, there needs to be a change that doesn't just involve redistribution or sort of tax and spend solutions. We really need to be looking sort of smaller, more locally for sort of bottom-up solutions and grassroots solutions. So it's a really interesting thought experiment that this article provoked. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.